I had just settled into the soft, early light of Charleston's harbor morning, the kind that smells faintly of salt and old oak. 65 years had passed, and today was supposed to feel like a gift. I had finally earned no alarm clocks, no lesson plans, no endless papers to grade. Just me, a steaming cup of chamomile, and the gentle hum of cicadas outside the kitchen window. I tucked a loose strand of gray hair behind my ear, letting myself savor the quiet I had waited decades for. The phone rang, sharp and insistent, breaking the morning stillness. I stared at the caller ID Valeria, my son's wife. My chest tightened not with fear, but with a familiar irritation simmering beneath polite smiles for years. I hesitated, letting the ringtone repeat twice more. Then I lifted the receiver. Hello. My voice was calm, deceptively neutral. Maren, Valeria began, clipped and brisk, as if dictating rather than asking. I'm leaving Diego, Sophia, and Mateo with you while I'm away. I know you're retired now. You don't really do anything. Right. The words hit me like a slap. My hand trembled slightly as I gripped the phone. My retirement, my carefully planned mornings of peace, had been dismissed with a few casual syllables. Excuse me, I said, keeping my tone measured even as my pulse quickened. I mean, she continued, as though explaining herself to a toddler, you're home all day. You can handle it. Just make sure they don't eat junk like last time. It's only 2 weeks. No big deal. Her laugh, sharp and brittle, cut through the quiet like glass. I set the phone down on the counter and leaned back in my chair, letting the heat of my tea curl in the air between us. I could feel the surge of indignation, the disbelief that anyone could treat me, who had raised my son alone, taught generations of children, and managed a household as though I were nothing more than a convenience. I picked up the phone again, this time with slow, deliberate calm. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. Valeria had no idea that for once. I wasn't going to follow her script. My mind began to work, quietly plotting each step. Outside, the harbor mist drifted over the water, soft and persistent. I let it wash over me, knowing this was only the beginning. The aroma of old textbooks and polished floors still lingered in my memory, even decades after I had left the classroom. I had started teaching at a small elementary school in Charleston when I was barely 22, fresh out of college, full of ambition and a head full of lesson plans. It was there that I first met Roberto, my son, bright-eyed and endlessly curious, the only piece of my life left after the accident that had taken his father. Miguel's death had arrived like a sudden storm one rainy October morning, a bus accident that claimed so many lives, and yet left me holding the one person I had to protect. I was 29, with a newborn, no spouse, and barely enough savings to cover the hospital bills. Every morning I rose before dawn to prepare lessons and lunches. Every night I graded papers after tucking Roberto into his small, hand-me-down bed. The world of single parenthood was relentless, demanding, and at times, lonely beyond words. There were sacrifices I never counted on birthdays, celebrated with homemade cookies instead of parties. Vacations postponed indefinitely. Dreams of seeing the world reduced to brochures I would leaf through while Roberto slept. A trip to New York. A quiet weekend in Savannah. A simple evening of reading by the water, all postponed. All traded for stability and opportunity for him. Even so, I had never regretted a single day. Each smile, each discovery, each small triumph in his life reminded me that every sleepless night, every extra shift, every penny saved was worth it. I had built a life on persistence, patience, and love, knowing that one day, My efforts would shape him into a man capable of kindness and strength. Now, at 65, I could finally envision the world for myself, my own time to savor. And yet, the memory of those years, those decades of quiet endurance fueled the fire in me. I would not allow anyone to dismiss my life or my worth, not now, and not ever. I sat in the sun-dappled kitchen, the phone still warm in my hand, and let the weight of Valeria's words settle. Anger surged. Yes, but beneath it ran a deeper current clarity. This wasn't merely a test of patience, it was a challenge to everything I had built, every sacrifice I had made for Roberto and our family. Passive compliance would only reinforce her arrogance. I couldn't let that happen. Slowly, I began mapping my options, each possibility branching like the streets of Charleston's historic district outside my window. Timing, strategy, and observation, these would be my allies. A confrontation without preparation could backfire. I needed certainty, evidence, and support. I reached for my address book and called Carmen, a lifelong friend who had helped me navigate difficult situations in the past. Her voice was warm but firm on the other end. I explained the situation in careful terms, omitting emotion but not urgency. Together, we discussed ways to gather information discreetly and ensure the children's safety, as well as the legal measures that could protect them and me if necessary. By the time I hung up, I felt the familiar steadiness of resolve. The plan was forming, methodical and deliberate. I reviewed every detail in my mind meals, routines, moments to observe, questions to ask, every interaction with the children. Every step I took would serve both to protect them and to expose the truth. Sipping my now cool tea, I let a small, private smile cross my face. For the first time since the call, I felt control. I was ready. The doorbell rang sharply. Cutting through the quiet house, I opened it to 3 children, each dragging oversized suitcases that seemed almost comical beside their small frames. Diego, 12, scowled with a phone glued to his hand. Sophia, 10, crossed her arms, lips pursed, bracing herself. Mateo, 7, shuffled nervously, glancing between us as if testing the air. I knelt slightly, keeping my voice soft. Welcome. You must be tired. Come in and make yourselves comfortable. My calm tone barely softened the tension radiating from them. But it was a start. They stepped inside, dragging their bags across the hardwood floor, eyes flicking toward me with caution, and, if I looked closely, curiosity. I guided them to the living room, setting their bags aside, and introduced simple rules meals at the table, homework before free time, devices used responsibly, nothing punitive, just predictable boundaries. The scowls didn't vanish, but their shoulders eased slightly as routines took shape. During snack time, Sophia hesitated, then offered me half her granola bar, a small gesture, yet one that pierced the wall she had built. I accepted quietly, letting the moment linger just enough to hint trust could be earned. Diego rolled his eyes, but complied when I suggested he put his phone away while we had juice together. Mateo edged closer to the sofa, curiosity outweighing caution. As the afternoon passed, I noticed subtle inconsistencies in their accounts of their mother comments about trips, school projects, and things Valeria had supposedly said. Their stories didn't always match, and I quietly took note. This would be important. By sunset, the children remained distant, but small cracks appeared in their guarded expressions. I watched carefully, noting strengths, vulnerabilities, and ways to guide them. For the first time since Valeria's call, I felt a mixture of anticipation and resolve. The work had begun. The morning sun, filtered through the blinds, casting golden streaks across the kitchen where I had laid out breakfast for the three of them. Eggs, toast, and fresh fruit, simple, nourishing, predictable. I called them one by one, insisting they wash their hands and sit at the table. Diego groaned, but obeyed. Sophia muttered under her breath, yet followed, and Mateo shuffled over, dragging a blanket he had tucked under his arm. After breakfast, I introduced the first set of routines. Beds made, dishes cleared, backpacks packed, shoes lined by the door. I spoke in calm, steady tones, emphasizing that these small responsibilities were their contribution to the household, not punishments. Diego rolled his eyes at me. Sophia whispered sarcastic comments under her breath, and Mateo mimicked them quietly, but no one outright refused. I maintained a calm authority, never raising my voice. When Diego left a juice cup on the counter, I guided him to the sink. When Sophia fussed over the wrong notebook for homework, I gently corrected her, each small act of defiance met with steady patience. And gradually, the tension in the room eased. By mid-morning, I noticed subtle compliance. Diego had stacked his dishes neatly. Sophia placed her homework in the designated folder without complaint. Mateo helped feed the cat without prompting. These were minor victories, yes, but each one hinted at respect being earned, at the beginnings of trust. During a brief pause, I watched them from the doorway, reflecting on how years of manipulation had shaped their behavior. Valeria's constant criticism, her selective praise, and the invisible wall she built around them had taught the children to guard themselves, to test boundaries, to assume that adults were either unpredictable or disinterested. It explained the hesitation in their eyes, the caution in their gestures. I felt no bitterness, only determination. This was my chance to guide them differently, to offer consistency, kindness, and structure. Each small compliance reinforced the lesson the household was a safe, predictable place, and respect was a two-way street. By the time the afternoon sun hit the living room, the children were beginning to move with purpose, following routines without constant reminders. It wasn't harmony yet, but it was a start. And for the first time since Valeria's call, I felt the quiet satisfaction of progress, knowing that patience, persistence, and gentle authority were beginning to take root. The evening settled over Charleston like a slow tide, and I sat at the dining table with the soft hum of the ceiling fan above me. The children had gone to their rooms after dinner, yet small hints of their mother's influence lingered in the air. Furtive comments, uneasy glances, and quiet mutterings that didn't quite match the stories Valeria had told. Something felt off. I reached for the stack of envelopes that had accumulated over the past few weeks, school notices, mail addressed to Roberto, and statements Valeria had handled before leaving. As I sifted through the papers, patterns began to emerge. Charges on accounts that made no sense, receipts for trips that contradicted her explanations, and evidence of withdrawals from Roberto's savings I had only just learned existed. My stomach churned. Valeria had not simply neglected to involve me, she had manipulated finances, leveraged her access to my son's earnings, and subtly isolated the children from their father and me. I paused, listening for signs from the hallway. Sophia had slipped a note under my door earlier, timidly, almost as if she feared being caught. "Mom says you don't care about us." It read, Diego had muttered during breakfast that morning about their father not knowing what really happened with the Miami trip. Mateo, the youngest, had drawn a series of pictures showing their mother leaving them at our door with a sad expression on their father's face. The The children were revealing fragments of truth without even realizing it, and I began to connect the dots. I gathered every piece of evidence I could, screenshots of messages, photos from social media, receipts, bank statements, even small behavioral notes I'd kept on how the children reacted to Valeria's instructions. Each fragment built a clearer picture of her deception, each one tightening the coil of outrage and determination inside me. By the time the house grew quiet, the plan had taken shape in my mind. Timing, witnesses, and legal steps would be crucial. I contacted Carmen discreetly, confirming the measures we had discussed, and reviewed the evidence to ensure it was thorough and indisputable. The more I organized, the more control I felt reclaiming. Even as the betrayal burned beneath my skin, looking toward the calendar, I realized Valeria's return was imminent. The next days would test everything: my patience, my strategy, and my ability to protect not only the children, but the integrity of our family. The storm was approaching, and I was ready to meet it head-on, armed with truth, preparation, and a quiet, unshakable resolve. The late morning sun glinted off the driveway as I heard the familiar rumble of Valeria's SUV. My chest tightened, not with fear, but with a precise, controlled anticipation. She stepped out first, impeccably dressed, a gleam of confidence in her eyes. Her high heels clicked against the cobblestones as she approached, dragging her oversized bags and wearing the same smug expression she always wore when she assumed she held the reins of our lives. "Hello? Maren," she said, voice sharp, commanding. "I expect everything to be ready. The children are tired from the trip, so don't make this difficult." She glanced past me at Diego, Sofia, and Mateo, expecting obedience. Defiance suppressed by parental authority alone. I smiled calmly, not a flicker of fear betraying the storm of preparation and resolve simmering inside me. "Valeria," I said, stepping aside to let her in. "There are a few things we need to discuss first." As she entered the house, I laid out the evidence with deliberate precision: bank statements showing unauthorized withdrawals, receipts from trips she claimed were work-related, screenshots of her messages revealing manipulation, and even her own contradictory accounts of events. The children stood beside me, their expressions cautious but resolute. Diego stepped forward, voice steady for once. "Mom told us things about Dad and Grandma that weren't true. She tried to make us afraid of her." Sofia nodded, her usual scowl replaced by a hesitant honesty. Mateo held up his drawings, each one capturing moments where he felt forced to follow Valeria's whims, as though illustrating the emotional manipulation he could not yet put into words. Valeria's confident mask faltered, eyes darting from the papers to the children's faces. This isn't fair," she sputtered, voice sharp but unconvincing. From the doorway, Carmen stepped forward, a quiet authority in her stance. "Everything here has been documented: the children's well-being, the financial records, the patterns of neglect and alienation, all verified. These are the facts." Valeria, her shoulders slumped, the carefully constructed illusion of control collapsing. She opened her mouth, but no words came, just the heavy realization that her plan had unraveled, the authority she had assumed she possessed over our household. Over the children, over me, it was gone. The tension in the room shifted instantly. Relief, hope, and a cautious triumph radiated from the children, their loyalty toward me now unshakable. I felt a surge of quiet pride as I watched them recognize truth, integrity, and the steadfastness of someone who had sacrificed decades for their well-being. Valeria's defeat was not loud or dramatic. It was absolute, methodical, undeniable. Every attempt to manipulate or intimidate had been countered by preparation. evidence and unwavering calm. For the first time in years, our household belonged entirely to us, reclaimed through truth, patience, and resilience. I stepped back, allowing the children to breathe, to feel safe, and to witness that justice could be both gentle and powerful. The storm had passed, and for the first time in a long while, we were free. Morning sunlight poured through the kitchen windows as I arranged breakfast on the table, the familiar scent of pancakes and fruit filling the air. Diego, Sophia, and Mateo moved about with purpose, completing their morning routines without reminders. Beds were made, dishes cleared, and backpacks packed neatly by the door. The tension that had marked their arrival had softened into a rhythm of cooperation and quiet pride. Roberto entered the kitchen, rubbing sleep from his eyes, a tentative smile on his face. For the first time in years, he truly observed the children in a calm, consistent environment. "Morning, everyone," he said, and they responded without hesitation. He poured juice, helped Mateo tie his shoes, and even offered to review Sophia's homework, his presence steadying the morning like a gentle anchor. The children's growth was evident in small ways. Diego offered to clear the table before I could ask. Sophia laughed freely over a shared joke, and Mateo proudly carried a tray to the counter without complaint. Each action, no matter how minor, was a step toward trust and stability. Valeria's absence lingered as a reminder of her diminishing influence. Messages she tried to send went unanswered, and her manipulative tactics could no longer reach the children. The power she had wielded for years had dissolved quietly, leaving a space for love and consistency to flourish. As we sat down to breakfast together, I felt the weight of decades lift slightly. The house, once tense and uncertain, now hummed with a sense of belonging and safety. I watched Roberto laugh with the children, and I understood the quiet strength of boundaries, patience, and truth. For the first time, our family operated as a unit, each member contributing, caring, and connecting authentically. The lessons of endurance, vigilance, and love had taken root. I allowed myself a deep breath, savoring the restoration of balance and the empowerment that comes from reclaiming both home and heart. I watched Diego, Sophia, and Mateo laughing in the garden, chasing each other with abandon, and felt a quiet swell of pride. The years of patience, sacrifice, and unwavering attention had borne fruit. Each small victory, obedience to routines, shared laughter, moments of honesty was a testament to resilience and love. I thought back on decades of single parenthood, sleepless nights, and the endless balancing act of teaching and raising Roberto alone. Every choice, every compromise, every moment of quiet endurance had led to this grandchildren who felt safe, valued, and empowered. The lessons I had imparted: patience, honesty, compassion, and self-respect were now taking root in the next generation. Inside the house, I noticed small signs of their growth. Sophia setting the table without prompting, Diego quietly finishing homework before play, Mateo helping water the plants. Each gesture was a reflection of stability and nurturing, quietly shaping the foundation of their character. Sitting back with a cup of tea, I allowed myself to absorb the fullness of the moment. The legacy I would leave wasn't just in tangible things, but in values, in love, in resilience. For the first time in years, I felt complete, not because life had been easy, but because the love and guidance I had poured into my family were returning to me in abundance. My home was no longer merely a place of shelter. It was a sanctuary of lessons learned, trust rebuilt, and hope carried forward. I smiled softly, knowing that what I had started decades ago would continue to flourish long after I was gone. The morning sunlight spilled across the living room, catching the laughter of Diego, Sofia, and Mateo as they built a fort with blankets and pillows. Their voices, once hesitant and guarded, now rang with joy and confidence. I watched them, heart full, as they collaborated, negotiated, and celebrated small victories together. Roberto joined us, carrying mugs of cocoa, his smile genuine and easy. He ruffled Mateo's hair and teased Diego, who laughed without restraint. Sofia, perched atop a stack of cushions, beamed at us both. The household, once tense and uncertain, now thrummed with warmth, routine, and love. I moved quietly to the kitchen, noting the small, consistent signs of care and respect they had learned. Each action, each interaction, reflected the values I had instilled: patience, responsibility, and integrity. My decades of sacrifice, guidance, and unwavering vigilance had shaped not only my son, but my grandchildren as well. Sitting with a cup of tea, I felt a profound sense of completion. Life had returned to balance, joy had replaced tension, and empowerment radiated quietly through every corner of our home. I smiled, fully present, knowing that we had reclaimed not only our household, but our hearts, and that this new beginning was ours to cherish.